The Enterprise has slowed to impulse speed and is making an intensive sweep.
Hold your position. Let them come to...
Hello, welcome to Star Trek Sodium. This week I've got some amazing facts for Star Trek Next Generation Season 2, Episode 8, A Matter of Honor, whereby Wesley makes a new friend who he mistakes for his old pal Mordok because it's the same actor. Also in the same episode, Riker visits a Klingon ship as part of an exchange to learn more about the mysterious Klingons. So now on to the facts. Star Trek's infamous makeup supervisor and designer, Michael Westmore, is infamous for his work in Star Trek. Eagle-eyed fans note that the breakout period in his career was during Star Trek Next Generation Season 2. The latex textures on aliens' faces have been smoothed out beyond reason. The realistic teeth of ghastly alien creatures was vastly superior to those that came before, and the hair lovingly created on Star Trek characters' heads was so seamless and realistic that he won first place at the 1988 Follicle Awards. Challenged to put his skills to the test, Michael Westmore took on his greatest challenge yet, to implant seemingly real hair where it had never been and didn't belong. He decided that giving the usually smooth-faced Commander Riker a rugged man's beard, one that fans would not realize was even false, would be the true test of his hairy skills. During Season 2, William Riker sports a hair wig on his chin, a follicle forest, which would not be needed for Series 3, as Frakes would finally decide to grow one for real. Can you even tell the difference? Oh, and Michael Westmore was nominated for an Emmy for this episode.
Yes, sir.
That's a wonderful method of maintaining a constant control factor over defensive shields, but I'm sure there's a way to improve response time.
One of the larger canteens of the Paramount Studios was located right behind Star Trek Studio 9, where Star Trek Next Generation and Star Trek V were both being filmed. As over 10,000 people work at the studio on any given day, thousands of gallons of milk were needed to satiate the many workers, so instead of using small bottles from shops, Paramount pen pushers decided to install refrigerated milk tanks, two of which were on the roof of Studio 9. During the spring of 1988, there was an incident involving water pressure and a weakened roof due to excessive filming, which led to a gushing milk leak which threatened to turn the entire studio building into a white dripping nightmare. Several inches of milk rained upon the sets that day, actually flooding the 10 forward set completely, as it had no drainage as it wasn't open at the sides. Reverse firemen had to be brought in to suck out the fluids through their nozzles, and clean-up teams took days to undo the nasty work of the dairy nightmare. Once the studio was cleaned and the roof was fixed, work resumed on Star Trek. The Next Generation wasn't affected that much, but the cost of fixing Star Trek V sets would cause the movie to be underfunded and would lead to the movie's ending being changed out for a cheaper one.
Sir, I am Ensign Mendon. I just wanted to tell you how pleased I am to be aboard the Enterprise.
Yes, of course.
In a recent interview with Better Call Saul's actor Michael McKean, he reflected on his time on the show and how it was one of his favourite filming experiences, but also reflected back to his time on working on Star Trek Next Generation's science fiction rival in 1988, Short Circuit 2. In a shocking story that he possibly shared, he noted that during the production of Short Circuit 2's fight scenes, he would be told by the director to imagine that he was actually punching the face of Star Trek characters and not just nameless goons, to give him an extra sense of hatred and impetus. Shortly after these fight scenes, he maybe claims that he was seeing LeVar Burton at a charity soiree, and the first thing that came into his mind was to attack him with his fists, as if he was a nameless goon to be terminated. Michael McKean went as far as to tell Burton to stay away from him unless he wanted 2 black eyes. This was only the start of the feud between the 2 productions, though, as from this point, the war of 1988 was really starting to heat up. It was during the production of this episode that Marina Citrus was giving birth to her daughter, Garina. She was obsessed with having the baby in her home country of England, but was contracted to be working on Star Trek at a strict schedule, so Paramount and Marina came to a mutually beneficial plan. As she started to show signs of going into labour, she would be taken to the airport for the next flight home to Essex. Once in Essex, she would go directly to Colchester Hospital and give birth softly to young baby Garina, the youngest kid in the world. Once born, the proud mother would return to American the next day and continue her acting. During the filming of A Matter of Honor, Dr. Pulaski actor's grandson, Ernie, supposedly came to visit the set, but little did anyone know in the studio that he was actually trafficking some kind of illegal residue in his jacket. The Paramount security guard dogs had picked up the unusual scent outside and led the security men to the guilty visitor. Being scared of dogs from a young age due to looking like one, Ernie shrieked and the film crew drew to a halt as Ernie had to be calmed down. He was taken to one of the security offices where he was searched and punished to the best of their ability. The day that filming ended for A Matter of Honor was the same day that actor John Putch finished his second of 3 episodes of Star Trek. In Season 1, he played the Benzite character Mordock. In this episode, he played the Benzite character Mendon. In Series 3, he would return for the final time as the Benzite character Mogtop. Viewers probably naively think that Benzites have a mysterious breathing apparatus attached to their costume, but in actual fact, John Putch, the actor, had the apparatus to combat his rare breathing disorder in real life. The Star Trek costume department simply integrated the apparatus into his costume to make it look like he has an interesting uniform feature, whereas in reality it was there to aid the actor to keep him from constantly urinating and hyperventilating. Michael Dorn actor Worf was having a tiring time in life, as he was at Paramount filming all day and out on tour with his girlfriend Belinda Carlisle at night. He wouldn't miss a single day of her shows and would travel for hours just to see her show and get back to the next day to Paramount to carry on with Star Trek. What Rick Berman didn't realise at the time was that underneath the makeup and prosthetics, Dawn was actually sleeping for hours at a time, hiding in plain sight. Jonathan Frakes would wake him up whenever he was needed, and that's why he seemed so drowsy during this damn period of Star Trek. Cheese enthusiast Lever Burton was always chewing cheese or possibly sucking on a hard lump inside his mouth next to his thick tongue. Whereas Gene Roddenberry never minded all of the cheese, Rick Berman was against anything that would cause a possible distraction. Not long after Berman discovered that Lever Burton loved cheese so much, he instigated a one-on-one meeting where he told Geordi that he didn't want any more cheese on set. Not one to give in easily, Burton asked his cousin Tim for ideas. The Starfleet uniform didn't really offer any pockets for storing cheese out of sight, but his cousin Tim had a stroke of genius. Inside the visor peripheral that Geordi LaForge has stuck to his face is a small but spacious strip of space where he could easily conceal either a strip of cheese or pack in tight lots of grated cheese. For a few days, Burton successfully hid a strip of cheese inside his visor, which he would snack on between takes, but it wasn't enough, so he reportedly crammed in even more cheese until it basically came out the front of the visor through the gaps in thin strips. Luckily, Gene Roddenberry saw this before Rick Berman and advised Lever to seek help about the cheese and told him to stop cramming it into his eyes. The famed filmers' strike of 1988 was starting the very week that this episode was filming, and all but one of Paramount's cameramen were part of the Filmers Union. As Star Trek V: Final Frontier and A Matter of Honor were being filmed at the same time in the same studio, the producers worked out an intelligent schedule whereby the camera would film a scene of Star Trek The Next Generation, and then film a scene of Star Trek V, and then back to Star Trek The Next Generation, and on and on. Basically, the cameraman would take turns filming one scene from one and one film from another. Originally, there was no plans to include Klingons in Star Trek V, but because footage from A Matter of Honor got mixed in with the Star Trek V camera work, an early version of the original scripted movie included small Klingon scenes that made it in there by accident, and they liked it so much that the Star Trek V team decided to include a Klingon subplot. Hundreds of years before the production of Star Trek Next Generation's second season, William Shakespeare was writing a popular play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, a popular and yet boring story of some people and mysterious characters mingling around in the woods. I'm certain that if Shakespeare knew that Star Trek Next Generation would be granted a second season, he would applaud its creativity and continuously high level of storytelling. Thanks ever so much for witnessing these fantastic facts from Star Trek Next Generation Season 2. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to, otherwise don't, and leave a comment if you want to, otherwise don't. Thanks very much, and hopefully I'll see you next time, and Happy Christmas. Ta-ta!